so much for coming back to watch my second video. I literally just started filming and Toby just vomited on the ground. I will be right back. So, welcome back to our second video. My plan is to start by reading a little chunk of the Book of Luke and kind of just using that as a framework, I guess, for finding some things to discuss and some questions to talk about. You hungry? Maybe we keep going in the high chair? Okay. Here's banana. Banana. Yeah. You want some? You gonna eat it? Oh, yeah. Very serious. If you haven't read the Bible very much before, you might find some things in this that seem a little bit weird. Like in today's passage, there's going to be an angel. And I just want to encourage you, as I read through it, don't give up too quickly. If you come across something that makes you go, that's weird, maybe that's not for me, it's probably weird to me as well. And I'm probably going to talk about it later in the video. So pretty much the structure of this video is going to be that I'm going to read it, and the text is going to be on the screen, and there'll be some like pictures and extra info and like my little comments as well on, I guess, where my questions are and what I think is important to talk about. And then the rest of the video will be me talking about that stuff, exploring those questions, and then towards the end I'll kind of share with you, I guess, how it hits me personally. So as I finish feeding Toby his banana, enjoy a cinematic reading of the first part of Luke's account. When Herod was king of Judea, there was a Jewish priest named Zechariah. He was a member of the priestly order of Abijah, and his wife Elizabeth was also from the priestly line of Aaron. Zechariah and Elizabeth were righteous in God's eyes, careful to obey all of the Lord's commandments and regulations. They had no children, because Elizabeth was unable to conceive, and they were both very old. One day Zechariah was serving God in the temple, for his order was on duty that week. As was the custom of the priests, he was chosen by lot to enter the sanctuary of the Lord and burn incense. While the incense was being burned, a great crowd stood outside praying. While Zechariah was in the sanctuary, an angel of the Lord appeared to him, standing to the right of the incense altar. Zechariah was shaken and overwhelmed with fear when he saw him, but the angel said, "Don't be afraid, Zechariah. God has heard your prayer. Your wife, Elizabeth, will give you a son, and you are to name him John. You will have great joy and gladness, and many will rejoice at his birth, for he will be great in the eyes of the Lord. He must never touch wine or other alcoholic drinks. He'll be filled with the Holy Spirit even before his birth. And he will turn many Israelites to the Lord their God. He will be a man with the spirit and power of Elijah. He will prepare the people for the coming of the Lord. He will turn the hearts of the fathers to their children, and he will cause those who are rebellious to accept the wisdom of the godly." Zechariah said to the angel, "How can I be sure this will happen? I'm an old man now, and my wife is also well along in years." Then the angel said, "I am Gabriel. I stand in the very presence of God. It was he who sent me to bring you this good news. But now, since you didn't believe what I said, you will be silent and unable to speak until the child is born. For my words will certainly be fulfilled at the proper time." Meanwhile, the people were waiting for Zechariah to come out of the sanctuary, wondering why he was taking so long. When he finally did come out, he couldn't speak to them. Then they realized, from his gestures and his silence, that he must have seen a vision in the sanctuary. When Zechariah's week of service in the temple was over, he returned home. Soon afterward, his wife Elizabeth became pregnant and went into seclusion for 5 months. "How kind the Lord is," she exclaimed. "He has taken away my disgrace of having no children." In case you tuned out during that, there's this old, childless Jewish priest who's having what it seems like is a once-in-a-lifetime experience of going into the sanctuary and the temple to burn incense. And then this angel appears to him and says, you're going to have a baby, which is really exciting for him, but it's also a baby that's going to be this significant spiritual figure for the whole nation. And Zechariah pretty much goes, that seems unlikely. Can I trust you? Like, how can I know that that's going to happen? And the angel says, like, I'm an angel, I would know. And then he says he's going to be mute until the baby's born. And then, lo and behold, he goes home and his wife falls pregnant. I'm going to go through that list of questions, and I'm going to start with the last one because I think it helps us get a big picture view of how we interpret the Bible and, like, what are we even doing here?
Look at you eating. Yeah. I'm so proud of you.
One of the first things I want to talk about is that bit at the end where Elizabeth says how kind the Lord is, he's taken away my disgrace of having no children. I mentioned in my last video that this genre of this book is that it's a historical narrative. It's kind of claiming to be a biography about Jesus' life. And so just like in real life, the characters that come up in this are going to say some things that might be objectively true, some things that might be objectively false, and some things that are true of their experience. The book of Luke isn't claiming to be, for example, a textbook or like a list of maxims. It's not like a tract of like 100 true things about Christianity. It's claiming to be a story about Jesus' life and about the people that were involved in it. And so if someone says something like that, you can't just take it at face value and be like, oh, okay, well, that's true for everyone. All that this tells us, how kind the Lord is, she exclaimed, he has taken away my disgrace of having no children, is that Elizabeth had felt disgraced and ashamed that in her old age she didn't have a baby yet, and that she is praising God for turning that around. In her cultural context, it would have felt like a disgrace not to have children. That there was this expectation about women that you had babies, and that if you couldn't do that or it didn't work out for you, that there was something wrong with you, or that you had done something wrong, like kind of a karma idea. And just as a side note, that's why I think it's really beautiful that Luke mentions that Zechariah and Elizabeth were righteous in God's eyes and careful to obey his commands and regulations, because I think he is trying to put before us that the reason that they're childless isn't because they've offended God in some way. That's not really how this God operates. The way that genre affects what we can take away from the Bible ends up being, I think, a massively important thing to understand as we go through, because there'll be times where if you're expecting a list of rules, you're going to read it as a list of rules when it's biographical narrative. Or if you're expecting like a neat little story with a moral or a character that you're supposed to emulate, you're going to get a different thing out of it than perhaps what Luke was intending to communicate. And so even though we all have our assumptions, I think the best thing we can try to do is filter them through what is the author actually trying to communicate and trying to align our assumptions, I guess, with his. I just wanted to jump in here and explain why I'm actually passionate about this. It's because the way people interpret the Bible actually has real effects on people's lives. There are lots of people that either for beautiful reasons or for really alarming reasons, they really care about living in a way that God wants. And either through ignorance or peer pressure or willful neglect, they just skim across the top of these ancient texts. And they end up latching onto an idea like God thinks it's disgraceful if you don't have any children. Developing a shallow belief like that might result in a bunch of shame for them. If they don't have any kids, it might result in them looking down on other people who don't have kids. And it plays its part in contributing to a culture where people think God has abandoned you if you can't have kids, or rejects you if you don't want kids. And it's not hard to see how that produces a lot of really toxic outcomes. Poor interpretation of the Bible affects people's real lives. It's not just academic. To really bring it home to my experience, there are people that have a bunch of different beliefs about death and about sickness, about having children, about prayer and healing. I'm really lucky that the vast majority of people in my life had, I think, really well-formed, well-grounded beliefs that helped me along the way. For example, no one tried to tell me that if I'd prayed more or better, that my son wouldn't have died. But there are people that think that. Those people are around. But you can probably see how if I think that way, that'd cripple me. As hard enough as it was. So I'm really passionate about trying to understand the Bible and its context and genre and stuff as much as we can, so we can have well-formed beliefs, not half-baked ones that end up making everything worse by just kind of throwing a bit of religious language on dodgy ideas. I mean, I guess I am making an assumption there that there is truth to be found in the Bible, but we can talk about that another day if you want. Anyway, you put it there, so you can dig into. Here we are. When I first started making this video, I thought that I'd be able to answer all 4 of those questions, discuss that, and do some extra stuff in between all in one video. But the more I started reading the passage and thinking about it, the more stuff kept coming out of my mouth, and it just seemed a bit tricky to cram 2 months worth of my life into one video. So I'm actually going to stop there and put the next one out soon. I filmed it already, I just have to stitch it together. I'd love to hear if you've got questions about anything, whether it's from my story and what I shared from that today or last time, or if it's from the passage, or if it's other questions you have about the Bible or anything I talked about today or whatever, or not. You can leave a comment, obviously. You can send me an email, or I'll set up a way in the description that you can send an anonymous question if you'd rather do that as well. Of course, I reserve the right not to answer everything, but I want you to feel comfortable at least to ask. Oh, thank you. Do I get a round of applause for that, do I? Thank you. Thank you. Mwah. So I'm going to get back to playing with this little one. And see you soon to talk about angels and some other stuff. Baby says, clap, clap, clap. Thank you for watching. Yeah. Yeah.